Love espresso, drip coffee, and cold brew? With the Ninja Luxe Cafe, if you can crave it, you can brew it. Espresso, balanced. Drip coffee, rich. Cold brew, in a flash. With Barista Assist technology, you brew with no stress and no guesswork. And make perfect silky microfoam hands-free from dairy or plant-based milks. Bring the coffeehouse home and unlock your favorites with the Ninja Luxe Cafe.
This is the story of the one. As head of maintenance at a concert hall, he knows the show must always go on. That's why he works behind the scenes, ensuring every light is working, the HVAC is humming, and his facility shines. With Grainger's supplies and solutions for every challenge he faces, plus 24/7 customer support, his venue never misses a beat. Call quickgrainger.com or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Operation Domination is underway. The ultimate game plan to dominate your NFL experience. With your hosts, Dan
You gotta be confident about your Achilles.
Jay Thornton,
Yeah, I mean, I got him at 2.
and Adam LaRue. Don't hope to be great and dominate.
All right. Welcome back into another edition of Operation Domination on your favorite podcast app, or if you could check out our video content, all the better on the Fantasy Football Advice Network YouTube channel at FF Advice Net. As always, I'm your host, Dan Mader, and the one, the great, the only, the Mr. Dr. Brian Scott is back on the show, breaking it all down. Now, I'm just full disclosure. We record this Thursday night. So the Thursday night football game is going on.
Yes.
And somebody we talked about last week, Jaden Reed, just got knocked out of this game. Now, I will say this, it wasn't the foot. It looks like it's a bad shoulder collarbone injury, but
yeah, hopefully not. But
it's
very, very concerning for a possible clavicle injury. Hopefully not a fracture. At the very least, he might have sprained his AC joint. Let's hope it's that. But yeah, he's trying to play through a Jones fracture. Man, if anything else happens to this guy, he's going to get shut down.
Yeah, it's a ticking time bomb. And he had the great week 1. And Brian, you called, he said, look, he might even look okay week 1, but it's just kind of a matter of time. And he's picking up the extra injuries is not helping.
He actually made a great catch on the play, unfortunately, too. And didn't they were going to rule a touchdown, but there was a holding penalty, came back, tough break.
Yeah, it really is. And look at you with the injury analysis on the fly.
On the fly.
Speaking of injury analysis,
yes, we got a lot to go over. It's week 1.
God, it's like we got 1 week, and it's not like there's always going to be injuries. Yeah. But I did not expect my list to be this full of like fantasy studs that we have to talk about, frankly. Yeah. So let's kick it to the top, and we do this position by position so we can get you the full rundown. So we go to the quarterbacks. There's one that we're keeping our eye on, and it is Brock Purdy. I mean, my 49ers just can't get a break. So it was a shoulder, but no one really cared about the shoulder. It was more like the turf toe that came up. So what do you got on Brock Purdy's turf toe injury?
Well, for one, I feel like every time he is hurt, it's always like two things. I feel like it's always like this and that, right? Like it's always an upper extremity and a lower extremity injury. So that's
when he goes down, he goes down with his whole body. So.
And that's not easy to compete with if you're a quarterback, for crying out loud. So they're saying it's a turf toe variant, which if you had to pick between a turf toe variant and an actual turf toe injury, you should always pick the variant because that means that it's probably not an actual turf toe. It's probably more like some type of ligamentous sprain rather than an actual tear to the really important structure, the plantar plate, which is the real thing that defines a true turf toe injury. And that, if that is injured, that's when turf toe becomes a real big problem and generally requires season-ending surgery or extended periods of rest and rehab. They're saying 2 to 5 weeks, and that's according to multiple reports. I'm guessing it's going to be close to at least 4 weeks minimum. That's my guess. He's already not practiced, I think, yesterday. I'm not even sure if he did anything today. Now you throw in the shoulder thing on top of it. I mean, it's not looking good. They're saying week to week. The MRI was encouraging. So, again, that's where the variant of the turf toe injury comes in. So I guess if you had to say, look on the bright side, that's probably it.
Okay. So you're saying maybe 4 weeks. Okay.
I'm thinking closer to 4.
Now, Purdy's a tough guy. And you're a medical professional, but it wouldn't shock me if he found a way to get on the field in, let's say, 2 or 3.
Yeah, I mean, and that's not out of the realm of possible. It really depends on the severity, but if it's enough to keep him out of practice already today, we're already at Thursday, there goes week 2. Now you're looking at, and the shoulder on top of it. You can maybe throw in a week or a couple days here and there too. Again, it depends on the severity. We don't know exactly how severe it is. They said it was better than expected, but anytime you hear turf toe variant, you're still talking about some type of turf toe injury, just not the one we dread.
Well, that's the good news. The reason I bring up that timeline of more like 3 is because when I look at the 49ers schedule, you get the Saints this week, you can win that with Mac Jones, fine. Arizona, 50-50, still not looking like a great team. Wasn't very impressed with their game when they played against the Saints. They get Jacksonville the week after that. That has a Mac Jones revenge game written all over it. The week after that's the Rams, week 5. I have a feeling, and that's a Thursday night game, I have a feeling that they're going to plan on Brock Purdy being back for that Rams game in week 5. That's just looking at it, that's about the right timetable. And it may be a week earlier, but I feel like they're going to make a push for that to happen. So that's kind of why I'm just throwing that out there.
And you make a great point, Dan. I always encourage you to factor that into my analysis and in how you use my information to make your decision about what to do with your rosters, because that is definitely something that gets looked at, not necessarily maybe from the medical side as much as the coaching and organizational side, but it is something that is considered when you're looking at their rest and how they kind of push them through their recovery and the aggressiveness with what they do that. So that is definitely something worth considering.
Yeah. So here's the point of the fantasy analysis. If you have Brock Purdy and have an IR spot, that's a no-brainer. Plug him in. The guy, when he plays, is a top 12 quarterback. He's a QB1. He should be on your rosters. The other thing, this was funny to me, and I'm only in like 2 home leagues. The rest of the leagues I'm in are either industry leagues, expert leagues, whatever. But the 2 home leagues I'm in, which are 12-man leagues, 1 quarterback. And typically, my smart analysis would be, look, if you don't have the IR spot, you don't necessarily waste one on Brock Purdy. He's a low-end QB1. You can find streaming options to kind of simulate that kind of production. But then I look at my home leagues, and that's what a lot of people are in when they listen to this show. Everyone has like 2 and 3 quarterbacks. I'm like the only team that doesn't only has like 1 quarterback. So you may not have a ton of quarterbacks available to you. So know your league, know what options you have. If you're in a smarter league where there's probably more quarterbacks available on the waiver wire because it is single quarterback and not everyone's trying to clog up their rosters with extra quarterbacks who can't play, then you should be fine to drop Purdy if you don't also have the IR spot. If you do, use it. If not, where people are just collecting quarterbacks, maybe find a way to keep him on your roster. Because again, when he comes back, he's a top 12 quarterback pretty consistently. As far as the Mac Jones of it all, look, I'm not looking to start Mac Jones for fantasy football purposes, but I do think Mac Jones, who should have been who the 49ers drafted back in 2021 instead of trading for Trey Lance, I do think he's a good fit for the system. In other words, if you're looking at Ricky Pearsall, you're looking at Christian McCaffrey, maybe we'll talk about Jauan later, but maybe if he plays, like I think Mac Jones can get the ball to these guys effectively enough that you can still play them with confidence. That's more my big takeaway for that. All right, so let's dive into the running backs. I only have 1 name for you, thankfully. I thought I would have more, but I don't. So James Cook, hamstring issue. What's the update there?
Well, he was limited on Wednesday and was upgraded to a full participant on Thursday. However, and I don't know when they play this weekend. If it's depending on the timing, this could have been a walkthrough if they travel. Sometimes they'll travel Friday, Saturday. Sometimes they'll get to the next city early and just do some walkthrough stuff Friday,
Sunday.
Saturday.
They play Sunday.
So that may factor into it. I don't know, but they're expecting him to be ready to go. I always throw the caveat in there with hamstring injuries, very high re-injury rate. Don't be surprised if that does happen, because until you simulate actual game conditions, it's really hard to gauge where you're at with a hamstring strain as far as your recovery goes. And this happened just barely a week ago, and he's already limited in practice with it, so it tells you that there is some symptoms there, and now you have to worry about a possible re-injury, which goes up and up the less time you have to rest and recover. So
No, 100%. So, look, ultimately, mostly good news on James Cook. Decent possibility you'll have him this week. If you don't, and you're one of the people out there who drafted Ray Davis, thinking he was the handcuff, he was the guy. James on the hunt to James Cook. Ray Davis gets that production. Well, the usage on Sunday was annoying because Ty Johnson. Now, I'm not saying Ray Davis wouldn't be the main rusher. I do think he would be, but Ty Johnson came in as the third down back, meaning if James Cook gets hurt, this is still going to be, to some degree, a committee between Ray Davis and Ty Johnson. Because Ty Johnson just, what is dead will never die. I mean, the guy just won't go away. Like, I don't know how he keeps hanging on the roster spots. He does just enough to get that passing role just to be annoying. So my point is this. If you're in PPR leagues and Ty Johnson's out there and available, maybe pick him up just in case. Because Ray Davis is mostly owned because most people drafted him to be that handcuff. So just kind of keep that in mind a little bit. But ultimately, trending up for James Cook. Okay, so wide receiver wise, Drake London, who I have everywhere because it's one of the few people who ranked him inside my top 5 of wide receivers. Shoulder issue. What do you got here?
Day to day, they're not saying exactly what it was. Sounds like it might have been an AC joint sprain. He had some scans done. I don't think it showed anything serious. He returned to practice in a limited capacity this week. The head coach is optimistic and has publicly stated that he expects him to play week 2. I think that's a realistic possibility. If he got at least some limited time in this week, they're probably just giving him time to rest. But at the receiver position, he could get away with this. I don't think it's going to be anything serious. We should see him play.
Okay, good. Thank you, Brian, for the good news. I needed that so badly. Somebody didn't put on the list. I should have. His teammate Darnell Mooney, who also came back in the limited.
I've been following Mooney very closely. I have him on a couple of teams. He's kind of the same boat, not the same boat as London. He's more of a question mark. I don't think he's going to be ready week 2. He's definitely week to week, but I think he has started ramping up his activity in practice. I'm hopeful for maybe next week. I mean, they didn't put him on IR for a reason, so they expect him back sooner rather than later. But I think we might have to wait to see him for week 3.
Okay, I mean, because he was limited practices both yesterday and today. So, and today being Thursday, obviously you're gonna be listening to this on Friday morning. So maybe the Falcons get both receivers back. If not, sounds like Drake London's going to be good to go, and maybe Darnell Mooney the following week. So that's big there. And Michael Penix looked fantastic. Like, I don't know what else you could have wanted out of Michael Penix. He did everything he could to win that game if it wasn't for Koo there, the kicker who's now gone for Atlanta. So good news though on Drake London. Start him with confidence. A shoulder issue that we're less certain about, I believe, Xavier Worthy, who got just taken out, by his own teammate, T Swizzle, took him out right at the top. So what do you got on Xavier Worthy?
Well, I mean, we called it. Multiple reports now have confirmed what we thought originally, and that he had a dislocated shoulder. So here's the good news. The good news is that he doesn't have a history of this. This was a one-time event. It was a traumatic dislocation because he took significant contact from Kelsey. Scans were done, which we knew were going to happen. The reason for that is to make sure there was no major structural injury that will render the shoulder chronically unstable and possibly lead to further dislocations. And apparently that is not the case, so that's good. He's not going on injured reserve. He does not need surgery. He actually practiced in a limited capacity today, Thursday, was wearing some type of protective sleeve or brace, which when it comes to shoulder stuff doesn't really do much. It's more for comfort. I don't think we're going to see him week 2. It could be several weeks, but I don't think this is going to be like a super long extended absence. It really depends on how sore he is and how he's able to progress through his rehab. The fact that he was on the field today doing stuff, even though limited, is actually a really great sign, which means that he's probably just a little sore. He's probably going to play with some type of protective brace on when he does come back. But as far as dislocated shoulders are concerned, this is a very good scenario for him to have happen. And he's avoided anything major. So I'm going to guess at least another 2 weeks before we see him.
Okay.
I'm saying no to this weekend for sure.
Okay.
Possibly maybe another week for him to kind of get over it and ramp up his activity and see if he's ready by week 4.
Okay.
That's my guess.
That is good news. I have a follow-up question for you. He comes back, he plays, whether it's this week, next week, the week after, whatever, comes back and plays on the shoulder dislocation. What is your expectation for how he could perform? Is the Xavier Worthy of old? Are we getting 70% of Xavier Worthy? Like, what do you think there?
No, well, I think the big issue is going to be if he does play with a brace, which I think we will see, at least initially, it's going to limit his range of motion a little bit. It might be a little harder for him to kind of reach up and make those grabs on a higher throw. You may see him shy away from contact a little bit. But as a guy who kind of builds his game around speed, it's not going to affect that. So you should feel comfortable knowing that at least you're going to have that going for him.
Okay. All right. So that's the good news. So basically what I'm hearing is that if Xavier Worthy goes, then you can go ahead and play him as you typically would. That's kind of what I'm taking out of that. So if he's healthy enough to go, even if it is this week, then go ahead and plug and play. Because Xavier Worthy's not the type of wide receiver who jumps up and for these like 50-50 balls anyway. So I'm not super concerned about high throws to the top. And I expect him to make a couple of business decisions given this shoulder issue. If he was put in that position, like, maybe I just don't go for that one. And you know what? That's okay, because we get to keep him on the field. So Xavier Worthy goes. I think I'd still have him in my... Right now, I have him well outside my top 60, just because we don't know about he's even going to play this week or not. But let's just say he did. I probably would still have him inside my top 36. I think we're still talking about him as a wide receiver 3. But let's say he doesn't go, as you would expect him not to this week. And I think I'm in line with you. I think they're going to give it at least a week before they go ahead and throw him out there. Hollywood Brown got all the targets in the world. Now, I get it wasn't down the field. A lot, he had 10 catches for less than 100 yards. I get that, but
Weight loss solutions are not one size fits all. Hers makes it simpler to get started and stick with a weight loss plan, backed by expert-guided online care that puts your weight loss goals first. These include oral medication kits or compounded GLP-1 injections. Through Hers, pricing for oral medication kits start at just $69 a month for a 10-month plan when paid in full upfront. No hidden fees, no membership fees. You shouldn't have to go out of your way to feel like yourself. Hers brings expert care straight to you with 100% online access to personalized treatment plans that put your goals first. Reach your weight loss goals with help through Hers. Get started at forhers.com/4u to access affordable, doctor-trusted weight loss plans. That's forhers.com/4u, forhers.com/4u. Paid for by Hims and Hers Health. Weight loss by Hers is not available everywhere. Compounded products are not FDA approved or verified for safety, effectiveness, or quality. Prescription required. Restrictions at forhers.com. Apply.
Lowe's knows how to get you ready for holiday hosting with up to 35% off select home decor. And get up to 35% off select major appliances. Plus, members get free delivery, haul away, basic installation, parts, and a 2-year Lowe's protection plan when you spend $2,500 or more on select LG major appliances. Valid through 10/1. Member offer excludes Massachusetts, Maryland, Wisconsin, New Jersey, and Florida. Installed by independent contractors. Exclusions apply. See Lowe's.com for more details.
He was targeted constantly. Somebody's got to get the ball. If Travis Kelce is not going to be Travis Kelce anymore, which, I mean, I know technically he finishes the tight end 3 last week because he scored a touchdown and tight end was freaking brutal last week if he weren't out, outside of Brock Bowers there. And he should have had another touchdown because he dropped it on the crosser. But besides the point, somebody's got to catch the ball. You're rolling out with Juju Smith-Schuster and a bunch of nobodies, as the Chiefs seem to always do, because they always seem to have one or two of their top receivers always hurt. Hollywood Brown's going to have a hell of a target share. So as it stands right now, assuming Xavier Worthy doesn't play, Hollywood Brown's a top 24 receiver for me and a must start heading into week 2 against the Philadelphia Eagles. And by the way, he got to play a little bit inside and out when Xavier Worthy got hurt. So that CeeDee Lamb role where we saw him light up the Eagles for 100 yards and should have been more if it wasn't for some key drops, that could be the role. Those could be the routes that Hollywood Brown gets to run. So don't think this is a bad matchup for him necessarily either. So Jauan Jennings, talk about shoulders. Shoulders across the board for the wide receivers this past week. My goodness.
Remind me, was Jauan Jennings the one we spoke about last week who had the new contract that centered around his
playing time? Yes, very much.
Here
so.
we are.
Yeah.
So I don't even know what his injury is, to be honest. But he missed his second day of practice today, Thursday, which does not bode well for playing this weekend. So I guess whatever his incentive was to stay on the field wasn't big enough, even though he signed on the dotted line. He was at practice. He did not participate in drills on Thursday, so technically was a non-participant. Whether that was planned or not, I don't know. But if he doesn't get on the field, do anything Friday, then it's highly unlikely we see him Saturday or this weekend. We'll have to wait to see what he's able to do next week.
Yeah, so all we really got on Jauan Jennings was that he avoided major injury, right? But they never actually told us what the freaking shoulder injury really was. Like, in San Francisco, like, unless it's really bad, like Purdy's going to miss multiple weeks or Kittle, who we'll talk about in a second, they don't seem to want to give you the actual particulars of what the hell is going on in that locker room. So I get it. It's really annoying. But all we know is that Jauan didn't have a major injury. So if he doesn't play this week, which if he was going to play, I think he would have at least had a limited capacity in practice on Thursday. And Kendrick Bourne, who they signed immediately, is already practicing as a result to that. Wheels up, first of all, Ricky Pearsall. Like, this whole offense on Sunday with Kittle, again, we're going to talk about him in a second, Kittle out, Purdy out, Jauan Jennings likely out. This whole offense is going to rotate around Ricky Pearsall and Christian McCaffrey. By the way, and I know this has been kind of played out a little bit, but it is ironic that of all the concern we had about Christian McCaffrey, he's the one who, had 31 touches and came out unscathed.
And I said everybody should not worry about him, right? I said that.
No, you did. You did. Absolutely. Like, no one panic, and you're absolutely right. Just mind-boggling. But yeah, wheels up, Ricky Pearsall, have him locked into the top 20 this week, not anticipating Jauan Jennings to play. Okay, so tight ends. We got a number of tight ends actually to talk about. So Brock Bowers' knee issue popped up during the game, didn't return. So what do you got there?
I think it was just a minor MCL sprain, nothing serious. They're saying day-to-day. I think that's reasonable. Not sure if he did anything today. We'll have to keep an eye on that as we get closer to the weekend. He could be a game-time decision. If it is, even just a mild sprain of the MCL, and if it's enough to keep him off the field in practice and preparation for the game, it could be at least a 2-week absence, meaning we might not see him this weekend. We might even not see him week 3. So definitely something we'll have to watch and follow next week.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll have to see what this practice report is going to be. I did hear some good news, like they weren't necessarily anticipating not having him this weekend. So
I saw something to that effect as well. But again, without a lot more information as far as what the injury is, it's a little hard to say. But it doesn't seem like they're overly concerned. So
that's the good news. So keep your eyes peeled on Brock Bowers. If he doesn't go, unlike the 49ers situation we're about to talk about, there is a tight end on the Raiders you can pick up. Now, Michael Mayer is not Brock Bowers. Don't expect that kind of treatment, but could he be a higher end tight end to fill in for a week or so? Yeah, I do think he has that capability, especially in a Chip Kelly offense that does typically target the tight end, whether he has a good one or not. So if Mayer's going to be out there on the field constantly because Bowers is out, I don't think that's a bad streaming option to go with this week if you need a tight end. So George Kittle, let's get into it. Hamstring on the IR right away.
Yeah. I think they're looking long-term here. I think they're probably just playing it cautious. Hopefully it's not that bad, but knowing the history of hamstring injuries, knowing that George Kittle, I think, has dealt with this in the past, if I'm not mistaken, why try to push through it? Why not just shut him down? Let's get this thing right. We've got a long season ahead of us. It was week 1. So he is on IR, which means the earliest he will be back will be week 6.
Correct, because he has to miss at least 4 matchups for that one.
4 games, no matter whether they have a bye or not. It's 4 games.
In the 49ers case, their bye is not till week 14, so 4 weeks is 4 games for them. Okay, so week 6 is the earliest Kittle comes back from the hamstring issue. Now, I want to ask you this as a follow-up. Is this the best way to, like when Kittle comes back, because the way the training staff is handling it now, would you expect Kittle to be Kittle upon his return?
Yeah, if it's not a serious hamstring injury, but because like we talked about, the re-injury rates are very high, and that window of re-injury can extend many weeks past their actual return to play. There's a window of time with when guys come back from hamstring strains that they are increased risk of having that re-injury occur. So even when you hear that guys are doing really well in their rehab and they're back full go, full contact, ready to play, there still is a several week window where the re-injury rates are still very high. It takes a long time for those re-injury rates to come back down to normal after a significant hamstring injury. So I think this is the way to go. Timing is everything. And like I said, because it's early, week 1, I think this is the smart thing to do so that later on in the year, when you're trying to make a playoff run, you have him available and he's 100% recovered, and that re-injury risk is much lower, if not back to normal.
Brian, what you just said right there was a point I was going to make. I know if you drafted George Kittle, you spent a top 3 round pick on him, right? You drafted him in the first 3 rounds. And I get that people who did that, you did that with the idea, I'm not going to have to stream the abysmal, deep, dark ocean that is streaming tight ends every single week. And I get that it's depressing when he goes on IR and like, look, next 4 weeks, I got nothing. But to your point, I was actually okay with this because what this tells me is that there's a better chance than there would have been otherwise that George Kittle can be George Kittle when I need him to actually be George Kittle, which is the second half of the season in the playoffs. You're not going to lose your league over the next 4 weeks, guys. The second half of the season is what matters most. Building yourself up, getting better each week to that point. Does it suck in the meantime? Yes. But your fantasy football seasons will still very much be intact by the time Kittle returns, and he could return at a crucial moment for you and actually playing at his level because they decided to handle it this way. So that is the silver lining. On the flip side, anybody who thinks Jake Tongas is a pickup is a moron. And I don't care if that's being harsh. I don't know why anybody would advise you otherwise. I don't know why people are rushing. He makes one grab. By the way, it was like his first touchdown ever. He makes one grab and to win the game. And people are like, oh, well, Jake Tongas, maybe. No, absolutely not. He's there to block along with Luke Farrell. Kyle Juszczyk is actually getting time with the tight end room this week. God knows who's playing that position. No, stop it. There's other options for you to go ahead and pick up, like, and I mentioned this in yesterday's show, Jauan Johnson, who's widely available and got an obscenely amount of snaps, route runs, and targets this past week on a team that's going to be trailing every freaking week. And talk about a guy who has free way to play because of injuries. Taysom Hill's on the IR, Foster Moreau's on the pup. Jauan Johnson has the tight end room all to himself. The only thing that's been holding him back has been the lack of playing time throughout his career. He's an actual receiver. Okay, I had to get that off my chest. Now, Evan Engram, calf issue. What do we got here?
Well, first of all, Dan, I thought we had a gentleman's agreement that we wouldn't discuss Evan Engram ever again because he was a former Giant and he underperformed his years in New York, and I was glad to see him go. He was often injured and, like I said, underperformed a lot, and he's been on the injury list just about every season that we've done the show.
Yeah, but here's the problem. He signed with Denver, got the Joker role, and then everybody jumped back on him again.
That's right.
Here we are.
Exactly right. Yeah. So calf injury was limited in Wednesday. Full participant on Thursday, but as I've known Evan Engram throughout his career and seeing him play New York, that doesn't necessarily mean he's 100% recovered. They expect him to be ready to go on this weekend. Okay, great. Like, he probably is, but I'm still not sold that he's anything fantasy relevant, but I know he keeps popping up in everyone's thing, so here we are.
So we did right before the season kicked off, actually, we did a best 5, a bust 5, a sleeper 5 tight ends. And he was on my bust 5. Not just because of the injury factors, which has always been a problem with Evan Engram throughout his career, but the fact that I don't really, outside of Cortland Sutton, I'm not really enthralled with any of the pass catchers of the Denver Broncos anyway. And anybody who thought Evan Engram could come in and be the Joker, I'm like, look, I don't know what you're watching. This is a guy who doesn't score a lot of touchdowns, even when he is targeted at an obscenely amount. And it's a guy who only runs about 8 yards past line of scrimmage. He doesn't stretch the seam. He hasn't stretched the seam since his rookie year with the Giants. That's the last time we've seen this guy actually be a vertical threat. So, yeah, I'm not on Evan Engram. Even if he's okay to go, I was already looking in other directions anyway. I would not advise starting him. So this guy we got to bring up a little bit. Isaiah Likely. Now, the ankle issue. First, give me what you got on the ankle issue.
Well, he's coming off this surgery or whatever he had, or maybe not even a surgery, I forget, with this small fracture in his foot / ankle. We don't exactly know what bone it was. They call it a small fracture. I mean, we can sit here all night and try and figure out what it might be, but going back to when the injury occurred, I think we talked about this last week or maybe even the week before. I think I was looking at like a week 4 return, which is why they didn't put him on IR, because by the time that week 4 rolled around, it was going to be about 6 weeks or so from when all this kind of started, or whenever he had done. I can't remember, Dan. I apologize. He kind of got lost in the shuffle of my list, but there's not been much more information than that, like as far as what the actual injury is. So your guess is as good as mine at this point. Now they're saying I don't think he's going to be ready week 2. So I'll stick with that original week 4 timeline that I'm pretty sure I said a couple weeks ago, because I've seen nothing in the reporting that would indicate it's going to be anything sooner at this point.
No, it's not. And I wasn't really going to bring this up until we get closer to week 4, because that has been the expectation all along. Even though there was a chance he could come back earlier, because they didn't put him on PUP, they didn't put him on IR. The reason I bring it up is because everyone's freaking out about Mark Andrews. I get that he only had 1 target. I get that he only had 1 catch, and everybody's like, when Isaiah Likely comes back, oh no, drop Mark Andrews before that. I want to rewind the clock a year. Okay, I want to remind people of something. We got to week 6 last season. Andrews stunk first 6 weeks of the season. Absolutely awful. And people were talking about, he had 2 goose egg weeks in a row. People were dropping him left and right. He still wound up with a Mark Andrews stat line by the end of the season, because he got his touchdown still by when it was all said and done. Isaiah Likely, on the other hand, had a good week 1, and then we never heard from him again. Did nothing. He was on the field, but he wasn't doing anything. So this idea that when Isaiah Likely comes back, that all of a sudden Mark Andrews can never perform. Dude, this is the Ravens. Only 1 guy in the passing attack can eat at a time. Last week it was Zay Flowers. That's how it works. If you drafted Mark Andrews, just like so many of the other tight ends ranked from tight end 5 to tight end 10, you're going to ride a roller coaster. That's how it works in that range. Is it maddening? Yes. But the second you bench Andrews is the second he has that 2 touchdown performance that you were actually looking for. So don't bench Andrews. Stick with it. Isaiah Likely is not a threat to his role and what he does. Everyone's freaking out about, Charlie Kolar played so much and Andrews didn't. Andrews has never hit the traditional tight end 1 thresholds when it comes to snaps and routes run. Never. He never plays as a full-time tight end. Never has that been part of his career. He's always had somebody else who's gobbled up those blocking opportunities. That's not what Andrews does. He's efficient with the opportunities he's given. Period. It'll be fine. Anyway, Cade Stover. Now, I typically wouldn't bring up a guy like this who is not on anybody's fantasy roster. I want to kick it to you for the injury analysis on here, but there is a reason why I put him on the list. So go ahead first.
So fractured foot, more than likely a Jones fracture. Going on IR. I don't know. Did they say he's having surgery?
I didn't see if he was having surgery or not. I felt like that was the sentiment when they put him on IR,
That's
though.
Kind of what I got just from hearing the reports, even though it wasn't specifically mentioned, but they also didn't specifically mention what bone he fractured. Okay, let's just assume it is a Jones fracture. Whether you have surgery or not, the timeline's about the same. Unless you're Jaden Reed and you're trying to play through it, of course, which doesn't sound like Stover is. So let's just assume it's a Jones fracture with or without surgery. It's going to be 4 to 6 weeks before that thing's even healed enough for him to step back on the field. And so IR he goes. Week 6 return is the earliest we'll see him.
Okay. So that's it on Stover. So week 6, the earliest we can get him back. The reason I brought him up is because there are so many questions, again, because of the injuries, about what do I do to fix my tight end position? Well, with Stover out of the way, what happened in week 1 is Stover actually played a near 50-50 split with Dalton Schultz. Now he's out of the way. Schultz still looked like, Dalton Schultz to me, like not super, oogly eyes I'm going to get out there for him, but at the same time effective when given the opportunities. And right now, because Nico Collins is the only established wide receiver, we're still waiting for Jaden Higgins to get going. We're still waiting for Jalen Noel to get going. They're rookies. This may take some time. And CJ Stroud's offensive line is just as bad as it was a season ago, so he has to get the ball out of his hands quickly. Well, Schultz now becomes a full-time guy. Guess what? We're looking at Schultz a possible top 12 tight end, at least while Cade Stover is out. Everybody was worried about the usage, but that's gone now. So this is the reason why I brought Cade Stover up. We talked about all these tight ends. We're talking about guys that you can target to replace them that might help you stay effective at that position. Dalton Schultz is a guy who now pops up because of the Cade Stover injury. Brian, I want to thank you so much for coming on, man. As always, every single Thursday night, dropping this on a Friday morning, and I absolutely love every minute of it. Tell everybody where they can follow you at, what they need to check out, what you got coming up.
Yeah, so this is it, man. This is what we do throughout the season. Dan on Thursdays, or Friday mornings, whenever you release it. TSS Fantasy at That Sports Podcast Network on Fridays and Sundays. I'll be doing some stuff with the Blonde Blitz and Deb Wickus. Starting week 3, we'll do every couple weeks with her on Wednesdays. So I'm pretty busy doing all the injury stuff. You can follow my social media on X at Injured List Pod. That's where I do most of my updates throughout the week. When information or injuries come in, I'll usually do some posts just to kind of give some information. Maybe sometimes I'll do some reposts with comments and whatnot. And then Instagram, Injured List Podcast. And then, of course, I've got a bunch of old episodes up on the podcast, theinjuredlist.com. You can check out some previous stuff there. Haven't done much new content lately, just been focusing on the football season, getting ready for all the weekly stuff that I do, which has been keeping me pretty busy. But, there's a lot of the stuff on there is still applicable today. Some good interviews with former athletes, healthcare professionals to talk about various sports injuries and stuff. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, check it out.
Awesome. Absolutely love it. Again, Injured List Podcast. Make sure you download and check Dr. Brian Scott out. Make sure you check us out, Operation Domination, on your favorite podcast app so you can get those episodes on the go. And make sure you download our video content when you go to the YouTube channel, the Fantasy Football Advice Network at FF Advice Net. I'm going to be back tomorrow with Chaz Filardi, Sports Betting Weekly, so we can line your pockets with some green along with our fantasy football analysis. Until then, we'll see you next time.